Okay, so welcome everyone, and thanks a lot for being here today. Sorry for the last minute change of the link and for the delay. Today, as anticipated by email, we are trying to have a meeting together to clarify some issue on the last version of the forms for the survey on Slow Food Gardens in Africa project. You already received the link, so hope you had the chance to get a look on it. With Tulia, especially with Tulia, also with Eddie, we revised the forms, we revised the information given, and also based on the answer received and collected, we noticed maybe some question that could be misunderstood or some doubts in replying to the question in the survey. So first of all, today we will try to clarify on that. We will quickly go through the forms, giving time if needed for discussion and for questions. So don't be shy if while we speak slide by slide you need to ask something, just raise your hand and I'll try to give you the floor while Tulia mainly and then Eddie will address the different questions of the survey. We try to do this training in 2 hours of time, but then if you will see next days that still something need to be clarified or shared, you can write emails. And after this meeting, we will share with you both the recording of today and also the slides we are presenting, so the PPT form with comments based on what we are going to discuss today. So hope these 2 materials will be useful also for those who can't join now and for future just a recap or revision. Now I ask Tulia if she wants to share the screen.
Thank you, Rene. I will gladly share the screen if I manage. Never a given.
It's working. You have to put the presentation way. Okay, perfect. Okay. Thank you.
All right. So good afternoon to everybody. It's a great pleasure to have you all here. And as Irene said, I will go through each question. Every slide is 1 or 2 questions from the questionnaire. Highlighting those points, those questions that we have seen present a few problems, but then when there are no problems that we have identified, I will leave in any case a slide a few seconds on the screen so that if any of you has any doubt or any question, please raise it now. So we recently changed after a lot of interaction and iterations and changes. We have come up with a possibly final definition of who are the key persons in the slow food community and school gardens. And these are the definitions that we have found, we are proposing. The first one is the Slow Food Gardens Coordinator, who basically is you. You are the people who supervise a number of gardens and who ensure the link between the garden itself and slow food. And you relate on one hand with slow food and at the local level, the garden level, with the community garden manager, who is the person from the community or from the school, could also be the professor, teacher, or anyone who in a school garden is responsible for the direct and daily management of the garden. And that is the person who links between you, Slow Food Gardens Coordinator, and the members of the garden or the students in the case of the school garden. And then, of course, we have the school directors, who are a key person, who is the key person in the case of school garden, and with whom decisions are made at the higher level about the school gardens. Questions? Okay, I go ahead. Now, another point that seems that may cause confusion is when to fill in the F1 and the F2 forms. And we would like you to fill in the F1 form whenever you identify and decide that a garden, either community or school garden, will be implemented in a given location. And this is why we have moved the questions about the administrative location and about the GPS data that previously were in F2 form. We have moved them to the F1 form so that it's easier for Slow Food International to set up the database about the ongoing gardens every season. So the F1 should be filled at the very beginning when you establish a garden, both community and school. The F2 can be, and in fact should be, filled in later on once the garden is operational, ongoing, and the cropping season is well advanced, or at the very end of the cropping season, because as you know, the questions in the F2 are about how the garden has been cultivated, the various cropping practices, the water, the pesticides, the crops, and how much of each, as we will see later on, and the governance mechanism of the garden and the objectives. So the F2 can be and should be filled in later on during the cropping season or at the very end of the cropping season. Both forms should be preferably be filled in directly in Confluence electronic platform. But as we know that many of you have problems in accessing internet for a sufficient time to provide all the information, you can also fill it in through the Word forms that we have circulated, and we will circulate an updated version after these sessions. So you can fill them either on paper or within your gadget, your device. You download the empty template on your phone, for example, and you can fill it directly in your phone while offline, while you are in the field, and then you transfer it on the Confluence or on paper once you are back in the office or at home, or whatever. Questions? Okay. So both F1 and F2,
please.
Yeah. Who has questions? Who has raised the hand?
Hamza, did you want to ask something? Okay, maybe not. Go on, Tulia, thanks.
As you know, both F1 and F2 have a set of questions, let's say, or request some information that is identical for F1 and F2. This is because it helps us keeping track when you send the forms at separate moments in time. And this is pretty straightforward information. The country you are in, the name of the garden. Don't worry about the code of the garden or the slow food code, because that is entered directly by Slow Food. Whether it is a school or a community garden, whenever the garden was established, month and year, the name of the person who is actually and physically compiling the form. And then we want also to know who is this person compiling the form. So not just the name and family name, the first and the family name, but also the role. And the roles are the Slow Food Gardens coordinator, could be the garden manager, or could be the school director. And this applies, so the school director option only appears for the school garden form, whereas for the community garden form, you also only have the coordinator, Slow Food Gardens coordinator or the manager. And we would also want to know the email and of the person compiling the form. In Confluence, the date of compilation comes up automatically. If you fill it in in Word, please enter it in writing. We have not seen particular problems with this information, so it looks like it is pretty straightforward. I apologize beforehand that you have to repeat it every time for both F1 and F2. Okay. Then always in F1, we request the information, some key information about the director of the school only for the school gardens, of course, the first name, family name, email address, and telephone number, so that if we need to get in touch with the person, we know how. Whereas we ask for more information about the garden coordinator. And that includes the name, the email, the phone number, a few information, personal information, the gender. We have seen, initially we had asked for the complete date of birth of the gardens coordinator. And then we realized that that created a bit of confusion in organizing the answers. So now we only ask for the year of birth. So whether it is 1978, 2001, or whatever, just the year of birth. And we also ask for your main job or work occupation. And then we ask about which other projects by Slow Food or initiatives by Slow Food the gardens coordinator have been participating. Irene, will you take this over?
Yes. This is an information that we ask in order to have a better knowledge of the level of involvement of people fulfilling the forms in the whole slow food world of activities. And many of you, we trust, know very well some of these projects. You participated in the arc of test, identification product, some procedure were start with some of you. In some countries, we have Earth Market and Chef Alliance. What was a little bit surprising and probably was misunderstood is that we ask only if the person who is filling is directly participated and contributed to this project. So it's very possible that you mark yes to ARC and Prestige and Earth Market, but it was a little bit surprising to see many people that was marking yes to Slow Food Travel project, because in Africa we don't have developed it so much until now. In a very few cases, people were involved on it. So also we ask you always to check if you want to reply. You have adapt. For example, arc of test. There's the link to go. Or I added the link in this presentation you will have later. You can check online on website if the products you have in mind are effectively on the arc of test in Slow Food archive. The same for Procedure, Earth Market, and Chef Alliance. So for Slow Food Travel project, please don't consider it just I know the project, but did I participated and contributed to this kind of project in my country? Otherwise, please mark no.
Thank you, Irene.
And also maybe to clarify on the slow food travel project, we actually, Irene, if you can confirm, we don't have slow food travel project in many countries. So it's happening in many African countries, we don't have this project. So you need to first verify if this project is active in your country or it's being implemented in the area, other than not just ticking.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Eddie. Because maybe you listen, you know about this project, but if it's not active in your area, better to mark no. Then it's not a big mistake, but just because we have seen in the majority of the forms received that people was marking yes to everything, while sometimes we know that even there's no Earth Market or Chef Alliance in the area. So please just consider it as if it's active, and in case you are in doubt, just check on website if it is. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can go on. So other information about the Slow Food Gardens Coordinator. It's about the background, the academic background, and the experience in agriculture and managing vegetable gardens, attendance of trainings, slow food training or other trainings, and secondary school diploma and university diploma degrees. And we have noticed that in many cases, many people have, in many forms, have yes for both university degree in agriculture or agriculture related topic and university degree in topic not related to agriculture. Now, we are aware that a number of Slow Food Gardens coordinator may have 2 university degrees, and those may be in different topics, but it is not that common. So please ensure that you only tick yes when there is on the right university degree that the Slow Food Gardens coordinator has, and not both, unless it is the case. But just pay attention that it looks like it's easy to mark yes to all, but maybe this is not really what the truth. And then we ask about the frequency of visits, and I have noticed that sometimes here there are also other frequencies, for example, more than once per week, or every day, but it's good because there is the option other. So that is very properly used, and this is a very useful information in general. We ask similar questions, very similar questions for the garden managers. The only information that we do not ask about the garden managers is whether they have participated in other slow food projects, because we thought that that is much more unlikely to have happened. But if that happens, you can always add this information in question 13 under comments. So here we have the same type of issues on the year of birth, only the year of birth. The university degree, if it's 2, it's fine, but if it is only 1, please mark only 1 cell, and yes and no in the other. And the frequency of visits, I noticed that it's quite okay. I mean, most of the answers fall within these options, and only few are different. And there is always this space in question 13. Moving on, as I said earlier, we have transferred the questions about the administrative location and the GPS coordinates from F2 into F1 for planning purposes. We have also noticed that in some cases, not every country has all these administrative divisions. Some countries do not have a region as such. Some countries do not have a county or a district. In that case, just mark N/A, which stands for not applicable, under the space for the answer. But this having been said, everything else usually looks fine. And also the total number of people living in the village or the town, the neighborhood looks usually correct and coherent. On the other hand, we have some problems with the GPS coordinates, and I understand that that is not straightforward. Also because most probably you, how you see them on your device, that is not the same for each device. So what we ask you is to transfer under latitude the first figure that appears on your device, and the first one or two figures which correspond to the degree, to the grade, separate from the others with a full stop. And this is also, and I know that that you know perfectly well what you're doing, but the problem is that in the transferring the information that you enter into Confluence, when it gets downloaded into Excel. So if you can follow these rules, that will make our life much easier. We also transferred, and I have forgotten about this, from F2 into F1, the question about the size of the garden. And this does not seem to present particular problems. Depending on the measuring system in your country, you enter the information on meters or square meters or square feet. In some cases, we have noticed odd figures, but I will not go into the details here. We will get in touch with you on an individual basis to clarify. Those are usually either too big gardens or too small. So a garden of 7 square meters is very, very small, and the garden of 8 hectares sounds a bit too large. But maybe it exists. So we will check with you individually in those cases. So with this, we finish F1. Is there any other question or doubt on F1?
Yes, one question. On the part that Irene was explaining about, that was Slow Food Gardens Coordinator, question number 5.
On projects.
Yes. And I think I was thinking that maybe can be changed as 5D, because I think we talk about Cook's Alliance these days, not Chef's Alliance project.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
The editing, you mean? Okay.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay. This is, I didn't know, so good to know. One always learns something. Anything else? Anybody else?
I have a question for Samson, maybe, but very quick.
Okay.
Regarding the Arc of Test project, for example, from the answers received, sometimes, but it comes later also in the F2 form when we ask what you are growing in your garden. So now I just anticipate something that later Eddie will explain better, but just start thinking that when you mention Arc of Test project, that we really mean those on that catalog, and not products that maybe are at risk, but not in the catalog, or maybe they are forgotten, or just you want to candidate, or they are not so much common now on markets. The product, if you mark Arc of Taste, should be really the Arc of Taste catalog of Slow Food. Okay, because later when we will ask you what you grow in the garden, there was also some misunderstanding there, but I will leave it to Eddie to explain better later. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Samson. Samson, do you want to answer?
No, I think that's very clear that we should indicate products that are under Arc of Taste that are being planted in these gardens, and not the products that we think that can board in Arc of Taste, but those that are already accepted and have boarded in the Arc of Taste. I think that's very clear also to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Samson. Okay. Anyhow, we can always go back to any question. So, F2. This is a difficult question. The F2 starts with a difficult question, which we have included because how many times a garden has been cropped, has been cultivated as a slow food garden gives us an idea, gives everybody an idea of the experience that the members or the participants have developed over time. So we are asking you to indicate whether the cropping season that is discussed and is reported in F2 is the first, the second, the third, up to the 7th cropping season of that specific garden. And we have added the calendar year to which when that cropping season is being cultivated. So let's make an example. In 2021, so last year, Garden X was established, and that for the first time, and that was the first cropping season of that garden. So I would mark yes under first cropping season and write under calendar year 2021. But Garden Y has been existing since 2019. So in 2021, it was at its, let's say that it is a garden that is cultivated only once per year. So it would be the third cropping season, 2019, 2020, 2021. And here I would write 2021. In many cases, I think that there is confusion with the year in which the garden was established, which is a question in F1. Here, it's info for A. So this is in F1 is when the garden was established for the first time as a slow food garden. And here in F2, we talk about which is the cropping season we are talking about in this form. Is this sufficiently clear? Does it help?
Yes, I think so.
I hope so. Anyhow, we are here. You think about it and you let us know. The following questions are about the partners. Basically, the slow food community or convivium of reference, if there is any twin garden associated to the specific garden discussed, and any other partner that is supporting the slow food garden. We have not noticed any particular problem with these questions, so I think it's pretty straightforward. And as nobody is making comments, I assume this is the case. The next question appears only in the school garden form 2. It's question 22, and this is to get an idea of the size of the school. So how many pupils or students attend the school every year? And we don't need it down to the last person. It's approximate. So far, I have seen no problems with this question. And your silence seems to confirm it. In the community garden, so the following question in the school garden is about the specific number of participants in the garden of the school. And here we have prepared, identified groups of potential participants, which are the pupils or students, female and male, the teachers or professor, female and male. If there are other adult or young women or other adult or young men who are participating. And you only have to enter the number. The corresponding question in the community garden form is identifies different groups, which are women head of household, adult women who are not head of household, young women who are not head of household, and the same for men. Men head of household, adult women not head of household, young men not head of household. And we also ask for the total number of households that are members of the community garden. Why this question? Because it's important to understand how many, what type of people participate in the garden, whether they are head of households. This is a typical question that donors want to know, in particular about women head of households. The definition of households is the most common definition in your own country. We know that households change in shape and size across countries, across ethnic groups. We are not discussing that. You use the definition that is common, that is most common in the area where the garden is. I must say that I have seen no problems in these questions, so I suppose that we're pretty clear, but I thought that it was worth giving some additional explanation. Okay. For the garden, for the community gardens, we also suggest that you prepare, that the garden manager shares with you a complete list of the members with some key information about them. I hope that this is possible. I strongly suggest that you encourage the garden manager to prepare such a list and share it with you. There is no need to share it with Slow Food International, but it should be kept as a record available with you, at the national, at the level of the country. Just as an explanation, the term young includes any person in the age group 16 to 32. And adult is anyone from the age of 33 years old above. Okay. Then we go on with the questions on the garden, more specific to the garden. And there is an issue about the location. We have prepared a few options which are mutually exclusive. So we have put them in the same color, those that are kind of internally coherent. So a garden could be within the village, town, or city neighborhood, or in the outskirts of the village, town, neighborhood, or distant from the village, town, city, neighborhood. But it cannot be in the three locations at the same time. So when you answer yes or no, please pay attention. The same issue happens with the gardens, whether they are on communal land or on private land, backyard. They cannot be at the same time on both. So one has to be a yes and the other has to be a no. And the third is on the land, on whether the land had been cultivated before or not. Either it was cultivated previously or it was not. So please pay attention when you fill in these, when you respond to these questions, to ensure that there are no contradictory answers. For the school garden, it happens the same. Simply, the first definition is slightly different because it is in the school compound or outside the school compound in the village or distant from the village. So again, please pay attention and ensure that the answers are coherent. The following question is about the distance from the closest market. And this gives you us an idea of the complexity of the difficulties and the challenges that gardeners face if they want to sell their product. If you do not know the distance in kilometers or miles, please give only the distance on foot by minutes. I think it's easier to calculate. It's easier to ask the people, the members of the garden or the school or the participants in the school garden, how long it takes them to go on foot from the garden to the market. Because measuring in kilometers and miles is slightly more complicated. So if you are not sure, please focus only on the distance, on the time it takes rather than the distance in kilometers or miles. And the following question is slightly trickier because there is a double negative. So this is about the security and visibility of the garden, and we have provided and changed a long time the type of fences that are most typical. The first option is that there is no fence. So if this is a yes, all the others have to be a no. And if any of the following, if there is any kind of fence, the first option has to be a no. Hope this is clear. And remember that if there is any fence, the first option is a no. Okay, before passing the floor to Eddie, this is the last, the first question of the crop, about crops. And this here we ask, when related to the rainy season, is the garden cultivated? So, because we know that you leave the gardens and in different agroecological and seasonal, rainy seasonal patterns, there can be various options. So the short or the long rainy season, during or after or all year long. It's, I have not seen particular problems. Often, sometimes some of you has answered yes to all, which is fine because it is all year long. But so I have no particular problems. We have seen no particular problems with this. Okay, now the floor to Eddie for the more details on the crops. Over to you, Eddie.
Thank you, Tulia. I will handle this short section of the presentation, basically looking at the agronomic and agroecological aspects, which are related to the monitoring and evaluation work, which we are doing for the gardens. When it comes to crops, question 35 is asking about is there any question on the previous, as if somebody is trying to ask a question.
Maybe I can say something, maybe.
Okay, Elfas.
To a definition of a young man in Africa or in Kenya is somebody between the age of 18 to 35. I don't know to this context if this was early young, because in the previous presentation by today it was like between 16 and 32. But to our case, I think it is between 18 and 32.
18 and 30.
18 and 35. To our case in Kenya, I think also in Uganda, if I'm not sure, and other African countries. As per our constitution, you know, definition of a young person, I mean a youth, is between 18 and 35.
Yes, it's a good point, Elfas. Thank you for raising it. We know that each country has its own definition. But that would make it very complicated to, I mean, here there are two options. Either we let each of you decide what it means young in each country, or we use one standard age range.
Julia, if I may jump in, I think on this term we need to set our own as Slow Food for the purpose of this work. We need to set our own standard, but also taking into consideration the diversity in different countries. I think going for the young, for the lower age of 16 to and also the higher age of 35 would be the most accommodating, because in some countries like here in Uganda, if a person turns 16, that's when they even get allowed to get the national identification. Means they are starting to recognize that they are young adults, or they are entering the age group of responsible people. And it goes up to the age of 35. So in some countries, it starts at 18. In other countries, it starts at 16. But the common limit is the higher limit, which is normally 35. So it's important for the case of this work to consider age 16 to 35 as our common standard. Because also in community gardens, you'll find young people who are 16 but not yet 18, and they are not in schools, and they are actually taking responsibilities of people who are in the age group of 18 to 35. So it's important to include 16 as a as a lower limit, and maybe 35 as the higher limit, also for the purpose of this research.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Julia.
Yeah, fine for me, no problem. We will simply change it in the text and we will adjust the data. No problem at all, fine. Okay. Back to annual and biennial crops.
So this question requires us to list all the, question 35 requires us to list all the annual, biennial, and biennial crops which are grown in the garden. So we have to understand that annual crops are the short season crops, which are grown in a very short, like on a quarterly basis for a short rain seasons, including crops like beans, crops like maize, which take 3 months, 4 months from planting to harvest. So we need to list some of these crop. We need to list these crops which are grown in the garden, or which are occupying the garden, and their intended use. There are quite a few challenges with this question, which Irene actually mentioned slightly about when he was talking to Samson, when she asked a question to Samson. One of the biggest challenge with this question is to identify if the product is an arc of test, if the crop which you're listing is an arc of test product, or if it's a Presidium product, or if it's a local species or variety, or if it's at risk of extinction, and then identifying the approximate area, but focusing more on the arc of test product. As many of you know, arc of test product is the online catalog of Slow Food, where we publish the products at risk of extinction. So I'm going to answer your question, Tulia. So for the arc of test products, products which are at risk of extinction, and they have boarded the arc, which is the online catalog of products at risk of extinction. So if you're filling in a product, so make sure that you verify with the arc of test online, which is published online on the Slow Food website for your country, to see if that product is really there on the list. So such that you don't just list products which are products that are at risk, only you think at risk of extinction, or they are not appearing anymore in the in big numbers in the society. This has to be specifically a product that has been published on the arc of test catalog. There is a confusion also, or there is also a question of a country having products on the online catalog of Slow Food, and a country like Kenya and Tanzania with the arc of test book that has been published by Slow Food and the University of Gastronomic Sciences. In this case, if you find that the books normally have more products listed as arc of test products for the country, more products than on the online catalog. So in this case, if the product is in the book and it's not in the online catalog, you can score that product as the arc of test product because it has been published, and maybe it's not yet updated on the website. But if it has been published in the official arc of test book in East Africa, we have only the arc of test book for Kenya and for Tanzania. I think in Africa, the one for South Africa is not ready, and also the one for Uganda we are starting working on that. So for other countries, we entirely rely on the online catalog, but for Kenya and Tanzania, there is an option of also looking into the arc of making use of the arc of test book. For the Presidium product, this is also a product where a Presidium has been launched. Not every product which is on the arc of test is a Presidium product. There are specific products or crops where a special project that is based in a community to preserve biodiversity has been launched. So you can only score a Presidium product as yes if there is a Slow Food Presidium which has been launched on that project. I will give an example of Tanzania. If a garden is growing Kitarasa banana, not any other type of banana, if there are a few or one or few Kitarasa banana plants in a garden, and you write Kitarasa banana, which is biennial, you can score that as a Presidium product, but not every type of banana where a Presidium has not been launched can be scored as a Presidium product. So that one you also have to rely on the information which is available on the website or other coordinators who are coordinating similar activities in your country. Local species. This is also where we have quite a lot of challenges. How does a product become local? This is a big question. We have, normally there have always been discussion on like 3 areas, like local, traditional, and indigenous. So a product becomes local if, first of all, a product becomes local if it's locally grown and the seeds can be locally found and prepared in the community. Like the whole production process can be prepared in the community. Many people, there is an argument on products like cabbages. Some people score cabbages like local, others score cabbages like not local. Because it's generally agreed that it's really difficult to get non-commercial seeds of cabbages, and you have to go to the seed shop all the time to get seeds which are prepared by specific experts and companies. That's why many people don't score cabbages like local, because also the varieties of cabbages, this is just an example, the varieties of cabbages, they have names like Copenhagen, like Drumhead, which are not actually known in the local context. So in that case, somebody would score cabbages as not local, but because of the seeds and also the varieties are not locally named or known. But when it comes to products like maize, you can score maize as local if it's a local variety of maize that is not actually being imported from other countries. There is an influx of maize from Netherlands, from other countries, maize seeds. So if you need to verify if it's locally sourced seed, that's when you can score the species or variety of the product local. But all the indigenous vegetables, as we know the African indigenous vegetables, all the indigenous and the traditional products, they are considered local. Species or variety at risk of extinction, this is now in the community. It's a product that you feel like it needs to be on the arc of test, but not yet there. Some of these products have been nominated for the arc of test, but not yet published. So if the community feels like this product is really disappearing, this is the space where to put the product. Even if this product has not yet boarded the arc, this is the space where you need to put the product. Julia asked about cassava being considered annual or biennial. Cassava, in most cases, cassava takes a maximum of 8 months. Is Mr. Madini asking a question? Let me first answer the question by Tulia. Cassava is normally, in many cases, cassava takes 8 months to 1 year, like the longest. There are some types of cassava which take slightly more than 1 year. So I would not score cassavas as biennial. I would score it as an annual crop, because in 1 year, one cropping year, you can harvest cassava and plant again. There are many varieties of cassava which starts from 6 months to 9 months. So you have to verify and understand. But in most cases, biennial crops are the ones which will take 2 years to takes 2 years to complete its biological cycle. cassava in most cases doesn't take those 2 years. So perennial are the ones which stay for quite long period of time, like more than 2 years in the garden, like for example, the bananas, coffee, fruit, some fruit trees. Biennial, they could be some short, medium seasonal crops, like some pigeon peas, they take maximum of 2 years. Then after harvesting, they dry out. So cassava would be classified as annual crop because you can plant cassava and harvest within the first 12 months. So it's important to classify cassava as annual because a biennial is only for those crops which take up to 2 years to complete its growing cycle for you to harvest from planting to harvest, and cassava is not part of that. Any question? Okay.
Yes, one question. Hello?
Yes, Samson.
Yeah, the question that I had was, for example,
Sorry, Samson, it was my fault. I was trying to mute others to listen you well.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the question was, for instance, there is a plant that has already boarded in. Okay, you have a plant that is a Presidium product already, but initially it was an lack of taste product. Should we tick for both, or we should just tick for the Presidium product for the Presidium product?
In this case, for record purposes, it's important to tick both, because a product cannot be a Presidium product. In most cases, Presidium products also board the arc of taste. So if it's both on the arc and also on the list of the Presidia, here it would be understandable to tick both.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
No, go ahead, whoever is speaking.
Maybe Francis, you wanted to ask something? No more question?
If not, maybe we can proceed.
Yeah, I just want to say it's we have structured the question so that we have annual and biennial crops in the same group, and perennial crops in the second question, because whereas for also annual and biennial, it is an area, approximate area occupied in the garden in percentage. For the perennial crops, we ask for the approximate number of plants, because those are, you can't say how many plants of maize you have, that would be too complicated, but you have an idea of how much it occupies of space in the garden, but you can count the number of avocado trees or banana trees, because those are easy. So, over.
Exactly. So this is a very good distinction, and also it's very good to combine the annual and biennial, so you will not have a lot of problems classifying them. But just like I said, for crops which survive in the garden for more than 2 years, they become perennial, but those which survive 2 years, they become they are biennial, and those which survive in a short season, like 3 months to 1 year, those are annual crops. So going down to perennial crops, those are the permanent or semi-permanent crops which we have in the garden. So it's the same procedure. If the product or the crop is on the arc, it's the same way we treat this product. Only verify with the arc of test. Same thing if the crop is part of the Presidium. Also only first verify and then you score it as Presidium product. Then also definition of the local species. If it's locally sourced and people have a lot of local knowledge about it, and you can maintain it without a lot of external inputs or without external inputs, then it has been localized to the environment and it can be considered a local species or variety. And if it's at risk of extinction, even if it's not yet nominated on the arc, or if it's nominated on the arc but not yet approved, that is the space. So the most important thing here to note from the previous questions 35 and 36, the important thing to note here is what Tuli has identified, has mentioned. Here we are looking at the number of plants. The approximate number of plants in the garden, and also instead of looking at the area covered, we are looking at how many plants have been planted in this or have been established in this garden. And for question 38, you can add any comment considered useful on the perennial plants grown in the garden, including plant names and categories. One thing which I would like to mention about the plant names before we get to the question, if the plant is only known in the local, hello? If the plant is only known in the local, can we all mute?
Please mute your mic. Maybe it's Francis.
Yes. Okay, we can proceed. I was saying something very important about the names. Some of the crops, typical African crops, are not well known in English. So one of the most important points here is that you can indicate the local names if you don't know the English name. So you don't need to find the English and the botanical name, or you don't need to skip a product if you don't know the English name. The local name is also as good as any other name. So don't miss a product on the list, just list the local name of that product, and we will record it like that. And also we can, if you list the local name, it would be easier in the future for some of us to find the English name or even the botanical name. So don't feel shy about filling in the local names for the products. Any question on this slide?
Yes, I have one question. Maybe back to question 37 or something, but I think it's the same for question 38 as well. That is the column for intended use: food, animal feed, medicinal use. Some of these crops, they have, some of them have more than one uses. So one could be for food and medicinal at the same time. Do you think we can write both here? I think I had an issue last time when I was trying to answer, because I was supposed to answer to either write it's for food or animal feed or medicinal use, but we have those that have got more than one or two uses. I don't know whether that has been modified to allow us to write more than one.
I answer?
Yes, Tulia.
Okay, thank you, Samson, for the question. It's a good question. It becomes a bit complicated. We can't see whether it's possible to enter more than one answer, but that complicates the analysis. What I've seen, some of you have indicated the main use by the name of the crop, and then in the final question about comments, have added most of these crops or all of these crops or some of these crops are used for food and for medicinal use. That already is the first way to go around this problem, but we will check with we can check with Alberto Rossa whether we can have multiple answers to this question. Thank you for raising it.
Yes, and I think in any case, if we cannot have multiple answers, maybe we can say intended main use of the product, such that people will fill in the main use. But the ideal situation is if we can have multiple answers to this question, and the multiple answers can be captured in the analysis.
Good
but just in case we can't have, maybe we can just add the word intended. We can just add the word main, such that we can capture that main use.
Excellent. We will do that. Thank you. Over.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Samson.
You're welcome.
Can we proceed?
Yes.
So we have question 39, which is basically looking at seeds. We have questions in this section which looks at seeds and propagation materials. This is because we understand that there are products which can only be vegetatively propagated, where you cannot use the seeds. For example, the bananas. So that's why it has seeds and vegetative propagation materials. And for this question, it's requiring to answer yes or no. And I don't know if we have many problems with this question, or you have found any, or with this section, or you found any challenges trying to get what this question means, or what these questions that follow question 39 mean. Did anyone get any challenge with this question? Because it's quite clear that you need to answer yes or no. If it's a community member's own seeds come from the community members' own gardens, or if it's community gardens' own production. Like they produce the gardens on site at the, I mean the seeds on site at the garden. Question 39A is talking about members contributing seeds from their own gardens to the community garden. 39 talks about neighbors through, 39C talks about neighbors through exchange. Or do they buy from the community garden members? Do they buy from neighbors who are not part of the community garden? Do they get seeds from the local shop or market? The first question, 39E, that question, local shop or market. Then there is 39F, which shop or market outside the village or town. So the 39E is actually looking at the village, the local shop or market, which is within the same community or the same area where the gardens are. Or state agricultural services, like the government systems of giving seeds, or do the seeds come from wild plants, which people go and pick seeds? Is there a seed bank where people get the seeds? So these are, you have to verify and interview or ask the people, and only tick what is appropriate. not to tick each and everything, because it's not possible to have seeds for the community garden that come from all these sources. At least they come from a few or some of these sources. And there is always a question that follows for you to add any other comment for anything that has been captured here, how the people manage the seed systems around the community garden. You can add any comment. Is there any challenge with this question, with this section, or is there any question? If not, then we can proceed. Source of water. Here we are talking about where water comes from for use in the garden. Basically, we are focusing on water that is being used to nourish the garden. Is it from rainfall, that you only wait for rainfall to come and nourish or water the garden without any other method? 41B, looking at rainfall harvesting, is there any tank, any pond, any other system that is used to harvest water that is later used to water the plants or to take care of the plants in the garden? Do they get water from the well, from the borehole, from the seasonal water body? Seasonal water bodies could be like seasonal rivers or seasonal swamps, which come only during the rain season, and during the dry season they disappear. So these are the seasonal water bodies. Or is it a permanent water body like a river, like a permanent swamp, like a lake, or any other permanent water body? Do they use public water tap supplied by the national or private suppliers? Gray waters definitely means wastewater. Gray water means wastewater from washing hands, cleaning, washing other utensils at home or in the community. So it definitely looks at people recycling this wastewater back into the garden. So you need to feel yes or no. Is the water they use paid for, or it's free of charge? Do they carry it on their heads by manual lifting, or they have a motorized pump that is either fuel or electric or animal driven? There are some pumps which are animal driven, solar pump or any other. I think if you find any other kind of pump or any other kind of water system that has not been captured up here and it's being used in the garden, it's really important to specify that, and we capture all these different innovations. Any question on water? Have we found any problem on water, source of water? Filling in this question, did we find any challenge? Okay, if there are no questions and no challenges, we can proceed to the next slide. Irrigation and soil moisture. This is the expectation as you're filling in the F2 form, question 43. You need to answer yes or no as appropriate to all options about irrigation and soil moisture conservation. So you only interview and also fill in as appropriate. Do they have watering cans? Yes or no? Do they use drip irrigation with pipe or bottle? Bottle irrigation is also considered drip irrigation, using the mineral water or bottled water, empty bottles, recycling them or using them for irrigation. So if it's happening, you tick yes. If it's not happening, you fill in no. furrow flooding or lateral irrigation, when they let water to flood through a specific plot of land as part of the water management and water conservation system. Terracotta jars. Terracotta, these are like clay pots. I think we need to correct the language here because not everyone understands what terracotta means. But as far as I understand, terracotta, it's clay pots or clay made jars that are used to irrigate. Sometimes they are buried in the ground and then the water seeps through slowly. And it's very common in the dry lands or areas which receive prolonged droughts. So mulching is another system. If it's happening, you say yes. If it's not happening, you say no. There is no use of ticking each and everything yes or no if something is happening. Windbreaks. Also part of the soil conservation, soil moisture conservation systems like trees, which create a conducive environment. So you need also to see if there are windbreaks like trees, if there are any other system that reduces the speed of wind from increasing the evaporation rate and also taking the top layer of the soil. Then tree shade, if there are shade trees, it's also important to specify if they use shade trees or not. And any other water management system that might not have been captured by this question, please don't ignore that. If you see anything unique and it's not part of this, you need to fill in question 43H. And also you can comment or add a comment on any water irrigation and soil moisture conservation methods as you wish in question 44. Do we have any problems with question 43?
I don't have problems, but I wanted to add something if I can, Eddie.
Yes, you can. Please go on.
Just to highlight the last questions on water management. As maybe many of you already heard this year, so in 2022, for the Gardens in Africa project and having as a deadline like Terra Madre, but not only Terra Madre, we asked to put energies and effort in mainly two aspects. One was the monitoring work, and this is why we are doing this training. But the second aspect we want to investigate more and focus more this year is exactly the water management techniques in the gardens. So it's very important to pay attention when fulfilling this part, and as Eddie was just saying, to add information in the comment part if you want to inform us about something maybe we missed or that you want to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Maybe do we all understand what terracotta jars are?
This we can edit, of course. We will change.
Sorry.
Sorry for that. We will.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we will work on that. Next slide. Soil fertility and management practices. So just like the previous question, we look out for the appropriate ecological soil fertility or soil management practices. If they are using animal manure, you say you tick yes. If they are not using animal manure, you tick no. There is normally confusion between animal manure and compost. It's a very big confusion, but you realize that in some communities, people collect manure and animal manure from rabbits, from sheep, from pigs, cows, and any other domestic animals, and they keep it somewhere in a pit or in a ditch which they dig, or sometimes they pile it under the tree and cover it. This is not basically compost, because compost goes through a rigorous step-by-step process, but it's just animal manure that is being kept to cool down such that it can be applied to the crops. So it's a different kind of manure from compost. Animal manure can be used in making compost, but that doesn't make all animal manure be classified as compost. So we need to make this kind of distinction. If somebody has just piled the manure, or they come and put manure directly from the kraal of the animals, the cows, that is purely animal manure, and it has not gone through any composting procedure. Green manure, if we can also explain a little bit more about green manure, in many cases, green manure is defined as living plants which you plow back into the crops. Into the soil, like you plant a cover crop, and at the start of the land clearing season, you dig it back into the soil, like you incorporate it into the soil such that it can bring about the fertility. Some people include crop residues as part of the green manure, saving part of the green plant of the crop, and you return it back to the garden as manure without composting it, but just incorporating it into the soil. So if somebody says, I use crop residues, or I dig the remaining part of the plant back into the soil, that is green manuring. And there you can tell if the person are using green manure or not. We've talked about compost. It's a combination of different materials, and it goes through a temperature or a thermal process. Sometimes it's cold compost, or sometimes it's hot compost, but it has to go through a combination of materials, and then you keep turning it, or even if you don't turn it, but you keep piling or putting different materials together, and it takes time to produce the compost. Then crop rotation. That one is if they are rotating crops in the fields, like this season they plant a different crop, next season they plant another one, and this is not very common on perennial crops. So it's mostly on annual crops and biennial. But if they change crops according to season, then they are doing crop rotation. If they don't change, they are not doing crop rotation. Intercropping, if they plant many different types of crops together, some people call it companion planting or companion cropping. If they are planting crops together to benefit each other and also to increase productivity, then it's okay, they are using intercropping. If they are planting one type of crop on the specific plot without mixing with other crops, then they are not doing intercropping. There is also a confusion sometimes when you find there are 5 different plots in a garden, but each plot has its own specific vegetable, and that doesn't qualify to be intercropping. But if in these vegetables there are other taller crops like maize, like fruit trees, then you can classify that as intercropping. But if they are just one single crop in the whole plot, and the other plot also has one single crop, then they are not doing intercropping. We talked already about mulching. It can be with dry mulch or with a fresh mulch, which can later be incorporated into the soil. But in most cases, most of the communities, most of the people, they prefer to use dry mulch. Raised or sunken beds. These are also important, though in most cases, many people use raised or sunken beds to manage water, but also it's a good way to manage soil by modifying the depth of the beds. For the sunken beds, the communities or the gardeners, they remove part of the soil and then they grow crops in a kind of a ditch, but well organized and made ditch. For the raised bed, putting soil, piling soil together and form a bed which is slightly raised above the normal ground. Terracing, if they are doing terracing mostly in the mountains or in the highland areas or hilly places, it's good to mention. If they are not doing it, it's good to say no. But also there are cases where a garden is not applying each and every one of these. So be genuine enough to say none is being applied, and nothing among these options is visibly seen in the garden. Sometimes these could be missing, but there is another technique that the people are using to maintain soil fertility, and it's not captured among these ones. For 45 L is also there for you to specify which other technique they are using. Can we, if you have any question on this, especially on the technicalities? Samson, are you
Eddie, I have
asking?
one question
Yes.
regarding the, yes, concerning the previous question, that was number 44.
44.
I was thinking about issues to do with cover cropping as one way to conserve soil moisture, things of the sort. I don't know whether it can be added over there as one way or as one method to help in soil moisture conservation.
Yes, cover cropping is one way, though also some people call it live mulch.
Yeah.
So mulching, like I said, it could be with dry straws, or it could be live, like living plants planted, established all over the plot, and the intention is to protect the land. And in the end, when they want to cultivate the land, they dig them back into the garden. But for purposes of clarity, maybe we can add this this specific question and not include it in mulch. Probably it could be a very big technical burden to define cover crops as live mulch. What do you think?
So you suggest we add the option cover cropping to question 43 as a soil moisture conservation method?
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any problem.
Okay.
Also, because Eddie, because many people, sorry, also I was saying that also, Eddie, because many people understands mulching as just doing it with the dry matter.
Yes.
Yeah, and for those people who understand more, it could be mulching using the dry matter, or even involving the what can I call it? The cover cropping to form canopy in order to conserve the soil moisture. But for the sake, maybe for those people who may not be in a position to differentiate, probably we can do as you suggested. Thank you.
Okay, that is good. Monica is also asking a question in the chat about liquid manure being classified as animal manure. If the liquid manure is derived from animal sources, then it can be classified as liquid manure. I mean, as animal manure. If it's derived from compost or a combination of other composted materials, it could be classified as liquid animal manure. I mean, liquid compost manure. So it depends on where it's been derived. Also, sometimes people derive liquid manure from fermenting plant leaves, like cutting and make what is called plant tea or other names which are given to these vegetative materials being cut and put in water and kept for some time. If it's applied as manure, yes, it can be green liquid manure. So for liquid manure, it depends on the source. And there is a question 46 where you can put the comment that if the garden is using liquid manure derived from animal sources, and then you can classify that as animal liquid manure. So in some cases, you find people find it more comfortable to handle liquid manure than the solid manure. So you need to take note of that, or you need even to specify it under 45L. Yes, I did not understand very well the lateral irrigation. This is a question from Irene, who is using the Slow Food Uganda computer. This is question 44. It's in question 44. So in some places, lateral irrigation is like digging trenches and releasing water in those trenches, and then the water seeps slowly into the ground. So someone decides to dig. They look like canals, but much smaller than canals. They are like at a smaller level. So somebody digs the trenches and releases water into that trench, and the water will move through the garden, and the plants will access it. Sometimes these lateral irrigation systems, they utilize the naturally occurring rain. So the rain comes and the flooding water is channeled towards a specific trench. So that is one explanation of lateral irrigation at a small scale. For furrow flooding, it's normally on a wider area, and water is directed towards a wider plot, and it floods on the surface. For lateral irrigation, it's directed towards the channels, but the technique is the same. Can we proceed? On pest and disease management, still it's a very easy option of answering yes or no. There are many innovations and alternatives which communities or participants in the gardens are using to ecologically manage the problem of pests and diseases. So on this question, there are many different options, but these options are not conclusive. Yes, like ashes, hot pepper, stinging nettle, garlic, soap, aloe vera, name them. There are so many others, and it's important to mark whichever is being used and also mark no to whatever is not being used. And if they're using none of the above, you also indicate that. If they're using something which is not captured here, you specify what exactly do they use. And also make sure that you don't forget to add any comment which you consider useful on pest and disease management practices. This is also very helpful in the knowledge sharing aspects. Next. So I will hand over to Irene, back to Irene to move on from the question 49 up to the end. Irene or Tulia.
Yeah, I will take over. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. Also considering that, sorry, Tulia, Eddie will probably have to leave in 10 minutes for another meeting. So in case we close after you left, thank you, Eddie, for joining and for explaining everything.
Thank you so much, Irene. And thank you, Tulia, for organizing this.
It was a pleasure, Eddie, to listen to a serious agronomist.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you. Ciao. I will let you proceed.
Thank you. Grazie, Tulia.
No, not at all. Okay, thank you. So, picking it up from garden logbooks. This is very straightforward. We have seen no problems. We simply want to know whether the garden is using a logbook to record crop-related information or other decisions. So I don't see, okay, this is thanks to Eddie. Unless anybody has any question, I don't think this merit needs much attention. Okay. Here we come to a slightly more complex question, which is about the objectives of the garden. And here, as you have noticed, the answers are no longer yes or no, but you have to rate the importance of each of the options that we have thought out. Here you will see that we have merged community garden and school garden for the sake of space. And we ask about the quality, the quantity, whether the purpose of the garden is the quality or more food or food for the rain season, and so on and so forth. What is important here, apart from the deciding, is really that this assessment includes the views of all the stakeholders. So it's not just the Slow Food Gardens coordinator opinion or the garden manager's opinion. We kindly invite you to engage briefly. It doesn't take long, but you discuss with all the members of the garden which are the most important objectives and which are very important, somewhat, and not important at all. Is there any question about this? Slow Food Uganda?
No, the question from Slow Food Uganda, I think it's Irene. It's concerning the stinging needle maceration. That is what Eddie was mentioning before, but maybe after the training presentation, eventually we ask to those who are still online to explain to her.
yeah, I know that it is a maceration of the stinging nettles, how long and how there are very technicalities, but also we can have sharing emails, send out a message on WhatsApp or an emails, and then somebody will provide the proper technical reply. Okay, so back to the objectives. As I said, we have seen no inconsistencies in the answers. So more or less, we assume that the question is easy to understand. And I don't see nobody is raising hands. So we go ahead. Governance.
Tulia, sorry, yeah. Just one thing that you mentioned, but I want to highlight again. Question 51, it's important, it's not just to add comments, because when we want to explain the impact of the project to the donors and to people who is supporting the gardens, this is a very important aspect. So the replication, if from your efforts with the gardens participants in schools and in communities, people know that have been launching more gardens thanks to your efforts, but without maybe the direct funding or direct energies implied. So this is a very good indicator of success of the activity. So if you know that from the school garden, many students at home have started new gardens, or that the community people in the garden have a community garden to replicate seeds and materials, maybe for techniques, but then at home they are doing their own garden. This means more 5 or 6 gardens of the households. Please add this information there. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. I had forgotten about that. So you have, in this case, you should add answer very important to 50I, and then in question 51, add the approximate number of gardens at home that have been developed by individuals. Okay. Next one, the governance. So here we want to have an idea of who is governing the garden. So we have identified, we asked for the name, first and family name, the role, the gender, and the age in a number of years. About roles, we have the manager, the secretary, the treasurer, advisors, storekeepers, chairperson in some cases, the Slow Food Gardens coordinator, and maybe others. This is for the community gardens, whereas in the school gardens, there are fewer roles usually: school director, the garden manager, the Slow Food Gardens coordinator, student spokesperson, and other. More or less, we have seen no problems with this question. I am aware that it takes time to write down names and gender and the age of everybody. So we appreciate a lot the effort that goes also into this. But if there is any question, please let us know now. Either you are too tired or bored, or you have no questions. So in any case, it's an incitation to go ahead. You are muted, Irene. Irene, you are muted.
Sorry, I was just joking that you can tick both options that Tulia was mentioning. You are bored, you are tired, you don't listen. No, sorry.
Okay, let's go faster. Now, management of the garden. This requires a bit of attention. This is a complicated question. We ask you to answer yes or no on statements. And some statements are mutually exclusive. So, in particular, the 54E all members of the garden participate in the decision of what crops to grow and how. And 54F, all members of the garden participate in the decision about the destination and distribution of the products, can be a yes, but then 54G should be a no, in the sense that either all decide together or everyone decides on his, her own. I am aware that there may be intermediate situations where maybe they decide on what crops to grow, but they do not decide on the destination and distribution of the products. So in this case, in these complicated cases, please add an explanation. Under 54H, others, please specify. Okay. Also, the following question, garden work organization, it's something similar. We ask how the work is organized in the garden. And again, 55C, all members of students work in the garden according to planning, or each member, household student, group of students works in the garden whenever she, he, or it wants. These should be mutually exclusive, but if we do not capture, if there are intermediate situations, please specify in 55E or at the final question at the end of these questions. Which is question 57. Question 56 is about where the, and we have changed it over time, so it looks, I hope it's easier now. So we have divided it in two. The first three options are the percentage value of the total from 0 to 100% of where goes or how is consumed the, or how is used the products from the garden. So either it is consumed by the households or it is sold to generate revenue for the garden, or is it used for demonstration events in the garden. We do not consider here whether the households sell the products that they keep for themselves. So here is distribution between households. Maybe we have to change a word here, products distributed to member households, sold for the garden or demonstration events. The sum of these 3% share should be 100%. So let's say that 50% is used by member households, 30% is sold directly by the garden to generate revenue for the garden, and 20% is used for demonstration events. But the sum must be 100%. The other 6 options are yes or no. And if it is, how it is distributed, whether it is distributed among members in equal parts or according to the time everybody has worked, or is sold to generate income for other community activities, or is donated to the poorest members or to poorest households in the village. So these are just a yes or no. And it's important to understand what is the use of the production. Do you have any question on these 3 big questions? Management of the garden, garden work organization, destination of the products? Okay, we go ahead. We are almost at the end. Cheer up. Training events and materials. This is a longish question and about which type of training material is used in each garden. Hard copy, online, slow food, non-slow food training materials, and whether there have been training events at the garden. We have seen no inconsistencies in this answer, in the answer to this question. So if you have any doubt, please share it now. Okay, easy. Here we have a question that we would have liked not to have, but we felt it was necessary to add. It was about the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, well, here we ask you to indicate whether the various options have continued as usual or were reduced or stopped completely. We have seen no inconsistencies. We hope that this question will become useless relatively soon. We may unfortunately have to substitute or to add a new one about the consequences of climate change on the gardens. But please let us know, think about it, and if you think that we should add a question on the effects of climate change on the gardens, please let us know by WhatsApp or chats or email, and we will add it later on. Next to last, so no, before to last, the challenges that the garden has faced. Here again, we ask you to discuss these with all the members and the key stakeholders, because it's important that we get a sense of what participants and members perceive are the key challenges they face. There are a number of options that seem to be quite complete. Only very few cases we had additional options added in the other 62N, in the other one, in the other option. And we have seen proper information provided about additional information and solutions identified. So I would tend to think that the question is well understood. But is there any question now? Any doubt? No? Okay, I'll go ahead with the very last question. We are there. So this again is a question that we ask you to discuss with all the members and the stakeholders, and about the support that the garden would like to receive in the next future from Slow Food. And it is, the options are organized awareness raising or training events or more funds or supporting funds for crop management or other technical supervision. We ask you to tell us whether it's important, the various degrees, the 4 degrees of importance. And as usual, you have the option to add any comment in the very last question. I have seen no problems with this. So, final, any other question, any other doubt on F2? Speak now or go home.
Hello.
Tell us.
Yeah, thank thank you so much, Tulia and Irene and Eddie for taking us through this document. Yes, somewhat to some extent, I know it was a little bit complicated, but I think it's more clear to me personally, because I don't know. I think each one of us should talk about ourselves, how you understood it. But one question is that, for example, when you're filling these document online, at the end of it all, the document is delivered. I would like to ask how, for example, would like to give this information about what the community members have answered, like maybe to give them the document. How can we have access to the online document delivered to Slow Food for the sake of the members? Because, you know, after several answering of these questionnaires, maybe they would like to know at a certain moment the answer this, so that they can actually try to gauge where they have come from up to where they are after several cropping season. So that's the only question that I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Samson. It's a very good point. Then, Tulia, you will add. It's very good because, in fact, this work of the forms, one of the big objectives of this kind of work is to help you in monitoring your friends and your beneficiaries and your partners, and to make them more conscious, also more aware of what they are doing. So it's very important to share the information they declared through the coordinators to them, to make them also have a reward, sort of any kind of feedback from this work, and also to easier the further survey, so to update the same data in the future. So this is a very good point. I will personally, the only answer I have now, but I asked Tulia, is to ask to Alberto, because now we can extract the information you fill in an Excel form, but there are other options of documents we can extract the data. So we must just check, I think, if there is a version of the data that is shareable. That is not an Excel file, because it would be very boring for the members, of course. So we will check it very soon and give you a reply.
Absolutely agreed. Thank you so much, Samson, for raising this. It's key. Sorry for not having given attention to this yet. As Irene said, we will explore the options. The easiest one would be that you save it. Before you send it, you save it and it appears. But I don't know, I don't think that's feasible at the moment. We have to see how to do it technically, but it's definitely a very good point. And we will also find a solution for those that have already been submitted.
Yes.
Most probably it will be work for us, but I think it's necessary. And it would be a really useful tool for the communities and for you to have with them to keep track of what happens and how they progress.
Yeah, I would like to add the 3 things based on that. The first is that we have an intern that is Brian. He's a Kenyan guy who is following this training, by the way. And he's the one who is going to help us when we receive the forms to upload the data on Confluence. So eventually we will try for the forms he will upload in the next days to see which are the options when he saved the forms, and to try things with him. The other thing that I wanted to oh boy, I just forgot what I was saying. Wait, just a second. Sorry. Yes, an important thing that we mentioned before, but there was not all the participants of today, is that in case you you have already submit the form, or you have filled it, and at the very last moment you check and you see that there's an edit needed or there's an error. The form is very long, so you don't need to apply everything, so to submit again the same form. If it's just for some typo, for editing something, a reply or a number, just please send an email to us with the indication of what is the information to be changed, and we will do it for you, because it will be taking too much time to do this applying again. And there was another thing now I forgot, but in any case, we will write again your emails in the next days with the materials. So it's also an opportunity for you, if tomorrow you have in mind something you wanted to ask, to keep exchanging on this.
Excellent. We will make the changes that have emerged, that have been suggested in the Word version and in the online version. We will also do the same with any suggestion that will come up from the training tomorrow with the Francophone colleagues. So let's say that most probably, well, hopefully by Tuesday next week, you will receive the revised version of the forms, and it will be also updated on the online. So maybe if it is not, if you have no urgent needs, do not enter any new form until we have the new version. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For the next few days, next week, until further communication, please keep on hold if it's not strictly necessary.
Yes. And Samson, do you still have a question?
Yes, I have one last question, because I just remembered that I don't know whether it has already been done, but it would be good to ask to understand if it's done on issues to do with. I remember once when I could send the form online. Remember, sometimes maybe you haven't tackled a certain question, and then it was a little bit tedious to check through from one question to another because the form is a bit long. But I remember there is that option once, maybe when you're submitting, and then the form realizes that you didn't fill a certain question. It takes you directly to the questions that you haven't answered, rather than the one that we used to have was just telling us that there is a question you haven't answered up there, but not specifically where. So I remember I had to go through the document like 3, 4, 5 times before I realized where the problem was. I don't know whether that one has been worked on or not. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question was made by others, by the way.
Yeah, but I did it, and when I don't know whether it depends on the system you have on your computer. In my case, I went back to the beginning of the questionnaire, and it listed the questions that had to be answered. So there was a short list at the top of the form that told me questions such and such and such have to be replied. So if you go back to the beginning, it should tell you which ones are missing. I hope so, at least. I mean, it happens with my computer, so I hope it should apply for everybody. But we will check it again with Alberto.
We will check in case it's possible, in any case, that instead of only highlighting what is missing, it also redirects you to the good point of the form. It will be useful, of course. Sometimes the Confluence has some limits, so we will check and see if it's possible, and then we will tell you something.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, time is running out, and it also has been long for all of you to sit there. I think it was useful and interesting, but it's still 2 hours of training. So thank you for participating and for intervening also. For those who didn't share specific comments, we hope it was clear and you could listen to everything. In any case, we will share the materials as Tulia said. So feel free to contact us and to ask. Also, Brian is available now. He's not, yeah, he's still there. I don't know if Brian just want to show your face just a moment to, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Brian. So he will be the one contacting you and the other coordinators if some data need to be verified, and you can rely on him for any need. So thank you very much. Thank you, Agnese, for the words, and see you next time.
Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Ciao,
Bye bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Bye, Teresa.